What if a tiny, forgotten tribe, armed with nothing but a dream, built an empire that ruled the world for 600 years? This is the true story of the Ottoman Empire, a tale of shocking betrayal, impossible victories, and a boy sultan who conquered a city that could not be conquered. If you want to feel the power of history and master the art of English storytelling, subscribe now and ring the notification bell so you never miss a chapter of our journey. So let's begin. Part 1. The Birth of an Empire. Let us go back in time. Far, far back, more than 700 years ago. The year is 1299. The place is a land called Anatolia. Today, we call this place Turkey. But back then, it was not one country. It was a broken land full of small tribes, small rulers, and war everywhere. Imagine that world for a moment. It was not a safe place. People were afraid. Cities that were once great were now burning. The powerful Byzantine Empire, an old Christian empire, was falling apart. It was weak. And the great Seljuk Empire, another power in the region, had already collapsed. It was gone. From the east, a terrible threat had come. The Mongols had attacked and they destroyed everything in their path. There was no peace. There was no strong leader. There was no one to protect the people. But from this chaos, from this fear and dust, a small tribe stood up. This tribe had no big army. They had no gold, no great power. They had only a leader, and they had a dream. That leader's name was Osman. He was not a king. He was not a rich man. He was just a man with a small group of loyal warriors and a very big dream. He dreamed of building a land for his people, a place where they could finally be safe, proud, and strong. So who was this man Osman? He was born around the year 1258. His father's name was Ertugrul, a respected leader of their tribe. Ertugrul had taught his son everything he knew. He taught him about honor, about courage, and about faith. When his father died, Osman, as his son, became the new leader of their tribe, the Kayi tribe. At that time, their tribe lived near the borders of the Byzantine Empire. This was the old Christian empire that once ruled a huge part of the world. But now, the Byzantines were weak, their lands broken. Osman saw this. He saw an opportunity. He believed with all his heart that it was time for a new empire to rise from the ashes of the old ones. An empire that followed the path of Islam, that protected the weak, that could unite the scattered Turkish tribes, and that would fight for justice for all. How did the empire start? It started small. Osman began by attacking small Byzantine forts one by one. He did not attack the big, strong cities. No, he was smart. He started with small wins, and every time he won a small battle, something wonderful happened. More people joined him. Warriors came to fight with him. Farmers came seeking protection. Believers came drawn by his vision. They followed him not for gold, but for a purpose. They believed that Osman was chosen by God to lead them into a new era. He did not call himself a king. He was humble. He called himself Bey, which means a leader, a chief of the people. But soon, the world started to notice this small tribe and its determined leader. The small tribe of Osman was becoming strong. Other Turkish tribes saw his success, his fairness, and they joined him. And then in the year 1299, Osman made the most powerful decision of his life. He stood before his people and declared his independence. He said, "We are not under the Seljuks. We are not under the Mongols. We are the Ottoman state, and this is our land." That moment right there was the birth of the Ottoman Empire. The name Ottoman came from him from Osman. In the West, his name was pronounced Ottoman. Why is this part so important? It is important because in that moment, a small tribe became an empire. not because of its weapons, not because of its gold, but because of its vision, its unity, and its deep faith. Osman did not live long enough to see the empire grow truly big. But he planted the seed. He gave his people the dream, and his son Orhan would take that dream and carry it forward. Part 2. The expansion from a tribe to a kingdom. After Osman died, his son Orhan became the new leader. Orhan was not just a warrior like his father. He was also a builder, a dreamer, a kingmaker. He looked at the land his father had started this small state, and he said to himself, "This is not enough. We must go further. We must become an empire that the world will never forget." Orhan's first big dream was to capture a strong, rich city. He needed something more than just small forts. He saw the perfect place, Bursa. Bursa was a beautiful and powerful city, and it was held by the Byzantines. It had strong walls, it had great wealth, and it was a center of trade and culture. Taking Bursa would be a huge step. But Orhan did not rush. He was patient. He surrounded the city for years. He did not attack directly. Instead, he slowly, carefully cut off all its supply lines. He made smart alliances with others in the region. He waited like a patient hunter in the dark. And finally, in the year 1326, the city of Bursa fell. That victory changed everything. Bursa became the first real capital of the Ottoman Empire. It was no longer just a collection of tribes. It was now a kingdom, a state with a capital city, with its own money, with real power. In Bursa, Orhan began to build. He built mosques for worship schools, for learning markets for trade, and palaces for his government. He wanted the world to see that the Ottomans were not just fighters. They were builders of a new world, a new civilization. To grow even bigger, Orhan knew he needed more than just brave soldiers. He needed a system. He needed a structure that would make the Ottomans stronger than any tribe before them. First, he built a powerful army. He created a regular army called the Yaya. These were soldiers who were paid and trained all the time. And later, this army would include something even more special. The Janissaries, which I will explain to you in Part 3. Second, he created a fair tax system. People paid taxes to the state, but in return, they got protection. They got roads, and they got justice. It was a fair deal. Third, he believed in freedom of religion. The Ottomans allowed Christians and Jews to practice their own faith. They could live in peace as long as they respected the empire and its laws. Fourth, he supported education and law. He built madrasas, which are Islamic schools. He trained judges and promoted scholars. He and his people believed that an empire is strong not just with swords, but with smart minds and fair laws. This new system made people feel safe. And when people feel safe, they do not run away. They join you. In 1331, Orhan captured the city of Nicaea, which is called Iznik today. It was another powerful Byzantine city. With every victory, more land came under his control. More followers joined his cause, and the world began to notice. The Byzantines in Constantinople were shocked. The Christian kings in Europe were worried. Even the powerful Mongols started to look closely at this rising power. But Orhan stayed calm. He did not call himself Sultan yet. He was still humble, using titles like Bey or Ghazi, which means a warrior for the faith of Islam. But inside the growing empire, the Ottoman name was becoming a source of pride. People began to say, "Maybe these are the leaders we have been waiting for." And now here is something you might not expect. Orhan's son, named Suleiman Pasha, did something incredible. He went across the sea into Europe. Yes, into Europe. The Ottomans, who had started as just a small tribe in Anatolia, were now crossing into the continent of Europe. They landed in a region called Thrace, which today is part of Greece and Bulgaria. They did not go there with a huge army to start a war. They went to help a Byzantine prince who was fighting a civil war. In return for their help, they were given a piece of land in Europe. It was a quiet step, a soft step. But it was the beginning of the Ottoman expansion into Europe. It was a moment that would one day change the history of the entire world. Orhan ruled for about 35 years. When he died, he left behind a powerful legacy. He left a strong capital city, a strong army, a growing empire, a system of law and respect and land in both Asia and Europe. From his father Osman's simple dream, Orhan had built something real, something stable, something that was ready for true greatness. But the next generation of leaders would do something even bigger, something the world would never, ever forget. Part 3. The Rise of the Sultanate. Orhan was gone, but the empire he had built was just getting started. The Ottomans now had a strong city, Bursa. They had a system of taxes and laws. They had land in both Asia and Europe, and they had the respect of thousands of people. But what they needed now was a true sultan. They needed someone who would not just protect the empire, but take it to the next level. Meet Murad I, the first true sultan. The son of Orhan was named Murad. He was not a loud man. He was not angry or flashy. He was quiet, patient, intelligent, and very strategic. But when it came to power, he was stronger than anyone could have imagined. In the year 1362, Murad became the ruler of the Ottoman Empire, and he did not just call himself Bey or Prince like his father and grandfather had done. He gave himself a new powerful name, Sultan. This word meant a ruler with both worldly power and spiritual authority. This was a very bold step. It was a message to the world. It meant that the Ottomans were no longer just a tribe, no longer just a small state. Now they were a royal empire. Murad saw that the capital Bursa was too far from Europe. The Ottomans had already started entering European land, so he needed a capital that was closer to the action. He captured a new city, a very powerful one, Edirne, which was also known as Adrianople. It was once a proud Byzantine city. Now it became the second capital of the Ottoman Empire and the first Ottoman capital inside Europe. From here, the Ottomans could expand further into Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and beyond. Edirne was beautiful. It was filled with big mosques, busy markets, and soldiers everywhere. It was a symbol of the new Ottoman power. But Murad did not stop at taking cities. He knew an empire could only grow if it had a fearless, unstoppable army. So he created one of the most powerful and most feared military forces in history, the Janissaries. These were not regular soldiers. They were trained from childhood. They were incredibly disciplined, completely loyal, and perfectly obedient. They followed only one master, the Sultan. How were they trained? They were often Christian boys taken from conquered lands when they were children. They were raised in the Islamic culture and trained in fighting and leadership and in loyalty to the Sultan. This system was called the Devshirme. Today, some people criticize this system, and it is a complex part of history. But back then, it made the empire stronger. It also gave these boys an education, training, and power. It gave them a chance to rise to the very highest positions in the empire. The Janissaries were an elite force. They were not allowed to marry or have private property. Their entire life was the empire. They became the heart of the Ottoman military power for centuries. And because of them, the Ottomans now had something that other empires did not have: an unstoppable army trained for victory. An army that fought not for money, not for land, but for loyalty. Now the battles begin. Murad now had a real empire. He had two capitals, Bursa and Edirne. He had a system of taxes and laws, religious tolerance for Christians and Jews, and the Janissaries, his iron army. It was time to move forward. Murad looked at the map of the region known as the Balkans. He saw Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Albania. He saw that this region was weak and divided. There were different kings with small armies and too much fighting among themselves. Murad saw his opportunity, and he moved quickly. He captured Plovdiv, Sofia, Nice, and many other cities one after another. The people of Europe were shocked. "Who are these Turks?" they asked. "How are they taking over everything so fast?" But the answer was simple discipline, unity, and purpose. The European kingdoms tried to resist. They formed alliances. They asked for help from Hungary, from Venice, even from the Pope in Rome. But Murad's army was too fast, too smart, too strong. In the year 1389, a major event happened that changed history forever. It was the Battle of Kosovo. On one side, there was the Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Murad himself. On the other side, there was a large Christian army led by Prince Lazar of Serbia. It was a bloody and violent war. Thousands and thousands of soldiers died. The ground, they said, turned red with blood. For a time, no one knew who would win. But in the end, the Ottomans won. They destroyed the Serbian army and became the new undisputed power in the Balkans. But this great victory came with a terrible cost. During the chaos of the battle, Sultan Murad was killed. It is believed he was killed by an enemy soldier who was pretending to surrender. It was a moment of deep shock for the Ottoman army. But Murad's son was there, and he was ready. After Murad's death, his son Bayezid took power immediately. He was the opposite of his father. He was fast, furious, and brilliant in battle. His nickname was Yildirim, which means the lightning bolt. Why? Because his attacks were fast, powerful, and completely unexpected. Bayezid continued his father's work. He expanded the empire even deeper into Europe. He fought against Hungary and Bulgaria. He even threatened the great city of Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. The world began to whisper with fear and with awe. Maybe the Ottomans really are unstoppable. Bayezid expanded the Ottoman Empire faster than any sultan before him. He defeated Christian kingdoms, he crushed local rebellions, and he surrounded the ancient city of Constantinople. The world was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, the Ottomans would take over the whole world. But just as Bayezid was preparing for his greatest victory, a monster was coming from the east. A man whose name made even kings tremble in fear. A man whose armies moved like a terrible storm across the land. His name was Timur, also known as Tamerlane. Timur was not an ordinary conqueror. He came from Central Asia, from the same lands where Genghis Khan's blood still echoed in the stories of the people. He claimed to be Genghis Khan's spiritual successor. He was not a sultan, not a caliph, not a king. He was a warlord, a destroyer, a shadow of fire. His army was powerful, fast, and extremely brutal. He had already crushed Persia, destroyed the great city of Baghdad, broken kingdoms in India, and burned entire cities to ashes. Now Timur's eyes turned toward Anatolia, the heartland of the Ottomans. Why did Timur attack Bayezid? It was not just about land. It was not just about power. It was about ego. Bayezid had started calling himself the Sultan of Rum, which meant the Sultan of Rome. This was a title that Timur believed belonged only to him. Also, both leaders were proud, ambitious, and completely unwilling to bow to anyone. Timur sent a message to Bayezid demanding his respect. Bayezid replied with insults. Their letters to each other were like fire and thunder. They did not just disagree, they hated each other. And so a great war was coming. The two greatest Muslim powers of the time were about to clash. Bayezid with his powerful Ottoman army, and Timur with his brutal and massive Mongol Turk force. They met near the city of Ankara in the hot summer of the year 1402. The air was thick with dust and with fear. Bayezid's army was confident. He had won many battles before. But Timur had a secret weapon strategy. He used spies. He spread rumors to turn Bayezid's allies against him. He even found Turkish princes who hated Bayezid, and he convinced them to fight against their own sultan. When the battle began, it was chaos. Some of Bayezid's own troops betrayed him. They switched sides and joined Timur right in the middle of the fight. His lines of soldiers broke. His army panicked. The proud Sultan, the Lightning Bolt, tried to fight his way out, but it was too late. Bayezid was captured. That single moment broke the empire. Imagine it. The man who ruled one of the greatest empires in the world was now a prisoner sitting in a foreign tent in chains. It is said that Timur kept Bayezid in a cage. Some say he treated him like an animal. Others say Timur allowed him to live with his wives, but in deep public shame. The exact truth is debated by historians, but one thing is clear. The empire that had risen like lightning had now fallen into darkness. Bayezid died in captivity in the year 1403. Some say it was suicide. Others say he died of grief and a broken heart. But what mattered more was what happened next. Bayezid had many sons, but he had never chosen a clear heir to the throne. So after he died, his sons began to fight each other for power. This terrible period from 1403 to 1413 is called the Ottoman Interregnum. It means the time between kings. It was a horrible civil war, a time of brother fighting against brother, each one claiming to be the rightful sultan. This was the most dangerous time in Ottoman history. If they failed now, the entire empire would be lost forever. Their enemies in Europe saw their chance and attacked Ottoman lands. Christian kingdoms took back cities they had lost. The empire became weak, confused, and broken. But after 10 long years of chaos, one brother rose above the rest. The son who finally took control was named Mehmed. He was one of Bayezid's sons, but he was not just a fighter. He was a healer. He brought the broken empire back together. He defeated his brothers. He stopped the European invasions, he rebuilt broken cities, he reorganized the army, and he restored the government. Mehmed I was not a great conqueror like his father, but he was something much more important. He was the saver of the empire. Without him, there would be no Ottoman Empire today. He ruled from 1413 to 1421 and died peacefully, leaving the empire stable and whole once again. But the world did not know it yet. The real storm was still coming. Part 4. The Conquest of Constantinople. After Mehmed I, the rebuilder died. The Ottoman Empire was alive again, but it was not yet complete. It was strong. It was respected. It ruled over many cities, but one city still stood like a great challenge, a city of ancient power, a city of dreams, a city that had survived attacks for more than 1,000 years. That city was Constantinople. Constantinople was the capital of the Byzantine Empire. It was one of the most famous and important cities in all of world history. It was built by the Roman Emperor Constantine back in the year 330 AD. For over 1,000 years, it was the center of the Christian Orthodox Church. It was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. It was a symbol of power, faith, and tradition. It had the strongest walls in the entire world. It had a deep moat giant towers, and it was surrounded by water on 3 sides. Many great empires had tried to conquer it. All of them had failed. And so to take this city was not just about war. It was about making history. After Mehmed I died, his son Murad II ruled for some time. He fought many battles and kept the empire stable. But the real fire, the real ambition came from Murad's son, Mehmed II. Mehmed was only 12 years old when he first became sultan. He was too young, too inexperienced. So after a few years, his father returned to rule again. But when Murad II died in 1451, Mehmed became sultan once more. Now he was 19 years old, and he was no longer a child. He was focused, educated, strategic, and he was obsessed with one single dream: to conquer Constantinople. Mehmed's own advisors told him it was impossible. "It's impossible," they said. "Too many great armies have failed. We will lose everything." Even the leaders in Europe laughed. A 19-year-old boy wanted to take a 1,000-year-old city. But Mehmed did not care what they thought. He had been studying the city since he was a child. He knew its history, its defenses, its weaknesses. He believed with all his heart that it was his destiny. He famously said, "Either I will conquer Constantinople, or Constantinople will conquer me." Mehmed did not just attack blindly. He began a plan that shocked the entire world. First, he built the biggest cannon the world had ever seen. It was designed by a Hungarian engineer named Orhan. The cannon was so large, it could only be fired once every few hours, but its power was immense. It could break even the strongest stone walls. Next, he built a fortress on the Bosphorus Strait right next to the city. He called it Rumeli Hisari. This fortress stopped all ships from bringing help or supplies to Constantinople. It was a clear signal to the Byzantines. "We are coming for you." He gathered a massive army of over 80,000 men. There were Janissaries, cavalry engineers, and builders. He had soldiers from many different lands, all united under his command. And he built a naval fleet, a group of ships to attack the city from the sea. Constantinople was surrounded by water, so he knew he needed both land power and sea power to win. The attack began on April 6, 1453. Mehmed arrived at the city walls with his massive army. Inside the city, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI had less than 10,000 defenders. Still, they stood strong, ready to defend their home. The city's walls were thick, high, and legendary. The Byzantines prayed and believed that God would protect them. But Mehmed was ready for a long war. For 7 long weeks, the Ottomans attacked the walls. The giant cannons kept firing day and night, shaking the very ground. Ladders and siege towers were built to try and climb the walls. The Ottoman ships attacked from the sea. The Byzantines fought back bravely. They used a special weapon called Greek fire to burn the enemy ships, but the city would not fall. Days passed. Then weeks passed. Mehmed became more and more aggressive. He did something that nobody thought was possible. He carried his ships over land using logs and ropes to move them into a different part of the harbor to surprise the enemy. Even his enemies said, "No one has ever done this before." But still, the great walls of Constantinople stood, until finally, May 29, 1453. Before the sun came up, Mehmed gave one final order. "We attack now," he commanded. "All forces from all sides." The soldiers moved forward like a wave of thunder. The cannons broke through a part of the wall. The elite Janissaries stormed in. There were screams, the sound of steel fire, and smoke everywhere. After 53 days of non-stop fighting, the great city fell. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI, died fighting like a warrior king, defending his city to the very end. But the city was taken. When the news traveled that Constantinople had fallen, the world gasped. The city that had survived for over 100 years was now in the hands of a 21-year-old Muslim ruler. Mehmed II walked into the city, and it is said he had tears in his eyes. He went straight to the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in the city. He stood there in silence for a long time. Then he ordered that the building must be protected. He did not destroy the city's churches. He did not kill the civilians. He declared, "From today, this city is ours, and it shall be called Istanbul." The people of the city were shocked. Many had feared the Ottomans, but Mehmed brought order, not destruction. He gave protection to Christians and Jews. He gave them freedom of worship. He gave new homes to those who had lost everything. He began to rebuild. He built mosques, libraries, schools, hospitals, and palaces. He invited scholars, architects, and poets from all over the world to come to his new capital. He wanted Istanbul to be the center of the world. Under his rule, the Ottoman Empire became a true cultural, political, and military superpower. The West was shocked. The East was amazed, and the Muslim world celebrated. The Ottoman Empire had now become one of the most powerful empires in all of history. After Mehmed II, many other great sultans would come. Suleiman the Magnificent, the great lawgiver; Selim the Grim, who conquered Egypt; Ahmed I, who built the famous Blue Mosque. But it was Mehmed who changed everything. His victory ended the Byzantine Empire forever. It marked the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of a new world. This is the legacy of the Ottoman Empire. It lasted for more than 600 years. It ruled parts of Eurasia and Africa. It gave the world incredible art, science, architecture, and powerful leaders. And it showed us that even a small tribe with enough faith, vision, and unity can change the entire course of human history. Maybe you never knew this story before. Maybe this is your first time hearing about the Ottomans in this way. But now you know. They were more than just warriors. They were builders, dreamers, and leaders. They were not perfect. No empire is, but they were powerful. And like the rise of their great empire, you too can rise. Even if your life feels like a small, struggling tribe right now, with discipline, with faith, and with courage, you can build your own empire. This story was not just about kings or battles. It was about having a vision, having faith, and never, ever giving up. The Ottoman Empire teaches us something very important. You do not need to be powerful to begin. But if you begin with purpose, with belief, you can become powerful. Just like Osman had a dream, just like Mehmed had a mission. You too have something important inside you. Maybe today you feel small. Maybe you think your English is not strong enough. Maybe you think the world has forgotten you. But please, never forget this great empires rise from nothing. And so can you. You did not just watch a video today. You walked through history. You learned real living English. You grew stronger. And that is something to be very, very proud of. So now hold your head high, speak with courage, and keep going forward because your story is not over. In fact, it is just beginning. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for learning with me. And thank you for never giving up. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with the world. Because stories like this deserve to be remembered. And people like you deserve to rise. Goodbye, my friend. Until we meet again in the next story, take care, keep learning, and never stop believing. Your empire is waiting.